She stepped off the wagon with a torn dress and dried blood on her neck. And Jed Callahan realized too late he'd bought more than trouble. The man who handed her over was already half dead, slumped in the dirt outside Mulligan's saloon, nose crooked, lip busted, hat lost somewhere between whiskey and regret. Debt settled, the gambler spat, wiping his mouth with a trembling hand. She's yours now. Jed stood stiff, dust crusted on his boots, jaw locked tight. This ain't livestock. She's not mine anymore, the gambler wheezed. Owed you 40. She's worth at least that. Maybe more. You'll see. The girl said nothing. Didn't cry. Didn't plead. Just looked at Jed with flat, burned-out eyes like she'd been hollowed from the inside. Barlow was a town of silence and secrets. When Jed loaded her into the wagon, nobody stopped him. Nobody even looked. By the time they reached the edge of town, the sun had dropped low, throwing long golden knives across the dry earth. She sat in the back, wrists in her lap, dress stained dark around the ribs. Jed didn't speak. She didn't blink. His cabin was 2 hours out, just a square of timber and grit, leaning into the prairie wind. He poured her water. She didn't drink. You got a name? He asked. Nothing. You runnin' from someone? Her eyes finally moved. Jed took a breath. Look, I don't want trouble. I'll give you food, a place to rest. Come morning, you can ride out. She stood slowly, walked to the cot, and lay down like a corpse, preparing for burial. Jed watched her for a long minute, then said it quiet. I didn't buy you. Her voice came for the first time, dry as dust. Didn't say you didn't. The knock came before sunrise. 3 sharp raps. Jed opened the door barefoot, shotgun resting against his leg. Sheriff Tolan stood on the porch, hand on his holster, face grim. You got company, Jed? Jed's mouth twitched. Could say that. Tolan's jaw worked. She come from Grady Pike? Jed didn't answer. The sheriff took a step forward. That girl's involved in something bigger than you know. And if you let her stay here, you ain't just harboring a runaway. You're putting a gun in your own mouth and pulling the trigger slow. Jed's face didn't move. You come here to arrest her? No. Tolan's eyes were cold. I came to warn you. She disappears. You'll thank me. If she don't, well, that ain't my mess to clean. After the sheriff rode off, Jed found her sitting by the cold fireplace, knees pulled up to her chest. You tellin' me what this is? He asked. She looked at him like a mirror, silent, dark, unmoving. He pointed toward the sheriff's tracks in the dirt. He thinks you're worth killing. I am, she said. Then, after a beat, but not for what you think. Jed stepped back. What the hell does that mean? She looked toward the door, then whispered, There's something buried behind Pike's saloon. If you don't dig it up before sundown, someone's gonna come here and burn your cabin down with both of us in it. Jed didn't believe in curses, witches, or ghosts. But as he hitched up his mule and slung the shovel across his back, he couldn't shake the chill that had set in under his ribs since the girl spoke. If you don't dig it up before sundown, someone's gonna come here and burn your cabin down with both of us in it. She hadn't blinked, hadn't trembled. She said it like a fact, like saying the sun would rise and men would die. They rode at a clip. The wind had teeth that morning, gnawing at the sky with dust and grit. The girl, May, she'd finally said her name was, sat in the wagon bed again, clutching a blanket like armor. She didn't speak. Jed didn't ask questions. Not yet. But he looked back once and caught her watching the road behind them. Not like someone afraid of being followed. More like someone waiting for the fire to come. They reached the back of Pike's saloon just after noon. Barlow was dead quiet. Folks always disappeared when the wind turned mean, or maybe they saw the two of them and knew to stay inside. May stepped off the wagon and pointed. Third post from the water tank. Jed dropped to one knee and pushed his hat back. The ground was dry, cracked like old leather. He dug fast, sweat breaking down his neck despite the wind. A foot deep, too. Then the shovel hit something hollow. He scraped gently, revealing wood. A box, narrow, long, not a coffin, not for a person, for secrets. Jed pried it open. Inside, a small oil-stained journal, a tin star wrapped in cloth, a photograph, old, cracked, faded. May reached in and pulled the photo out with shaking hands. It showed 5 men, all in suits. In the center stood a tall, hawk-nosed man with the same eyes as Sheriff Tolan. Below the photo, in ink nearly faded to nothing, Pike Creek Agreement, March 1st, 1878. Jed opened the journal. Inside, dates, payments, names, Tolan, Mayor Tibbet, Grady Pike, one of the railroad barons, and a 4th name circled in red, C. Gentry. Jed's blood turned thick. Gentry ran the county bank, owned half the damn town. These men, May said softly, they signed off on the killings, burned farms, paid off lawmen, bought silence in blood. Jed looked up. This enough to bury them? She shook her head. It's enough to get us killed. They didn't make it out of town. 3 men blocked the road before Jed could even turn the wagon. One had a rifle slung casual over his shoulder. Another chewed a matchstick and smiled like a butcher watching meat walk in. The third was tall, thin, dressed in black with silver rings on his fingers. Jed knew his name before he even spoke. C. Gentry. Afternoon, Callahan. Jed nodded once. Gentry. Gentry tipped his hat to May. Wasn't expecting you to dig so fast. Thought you might have more sense. Jed stayed quiet. His hand drifted slowly toward the shotgun mounted beside the wagon seat. Careful, Gentry said. Wouldn't want you to spill blood in front of the girl. She's seen enough, don't you think? May's eyes locked on him. Cold. Steady. Where's Tolan? She asked. Gentry chuckled. Preparing the paperwork. Sheriff can't hang you without a signature. Jed stiffened. You're not the law. No, Gentry said. I'm above it. He gave a small gesture with his chin. The rifleman stepped forward. Now, Gentry said, voice like velvet dragged through glass, why don't you hand over what you found, and let's pretend this never happened. Jed reached into his coat and held up the journal. Take it. May snapped her head toward him. What? He held up his other hand, eyes never leaving Gentry. You'll let her go? Gentry smiled. Of course. You have my word. Jed tossed the journal. The moment it left his hand, the rifleman raised his weapon. Boom! Jed fired first, one hand yanking the shotgun from its mount, barrel smoking. The rifleman crumpled. May grabbed the reins. Jed shouted, Go! The wagon lurched forward, hooves kicking dust and gravel. Behind them, Gentry shouted something, but Jed didn't look back. The girl had the wagon aimed straight for the river road, and Jed reloaded with shaking fingers, heart hammering in his throat. They didn't stop until the town disappeared behind a wall of dust and smoke. They made camp in a dry ravine 10 miles out. Jed tore into the journal again. It was real. Every page stank of rot and power. The kind of thing men kill to keep quiet. May sat with her knees to her chest, watching the fire. I thought you were going to give it to them, she said quietly. Jed didn't answer at first. I was, he admitted, until I saw his face. Gentry wasn't just going to kill you. He was going to make sure no one even remembered your name. She nodded. That's what they do. He stared into the flames. What now? May looked up and said, We finish it. The night wind howled through the ravine like a voice trying to warn them. Jed tossed more wood on the fire, eyes scanning the ridge above for movement. His shotgun was cleaned, loaded, and ready beside him. May hadn't slept. She sat cross-legged, turning the tin star over and over in her fingers. "You wear one of these?" Jed asked. She nodded. "My father did, before they killed him." Jed rubbed the back of his neck. "He a lawman?" "Not officially." Her voice cracked. "He kept records, witness statements, names. He thought if he collected enough, somebody would listen." Jed watched her face. "And did they?" May shook her head. "They burned the house down with him in it." At dawn, they were moving again, cutting west, toward the hills near Copper Hollow, where the law thinned out and terrain took over. "If we can make it to Widow's Bluff," Jed said. "There's an old mining shack up there. Nobody'll look for us that high." May kept her eyes on the horizon. "They'll look everywhere now. Gentry doesn't let go." Jed grunted. "Then we'll make him bleed for holding on." By noon, they were halfway through the narrow pass when they saw the smoke. Not campfire smoke. Black smoke. Oily. Thick. Jed froze, pulled the mule to a stop and climbed a ridge for a better look. Down in the gulch, maybe a mile out, flames licked the sky from what used to be a farmhouse. Not his, but close. A body hung from the gatepost, shirtless, head down. Jed cursed under his breath. May climbed up beside him. Her face went pale. "They're sending messages," she whispered. Jed nodded. "They're burning anyone who helped me." They rode harder. Dirt kicked up behind the wagon like a beacon. By sundown, they reached Widow's Bluff, a jagged, lonely cliffside with a cabin half swallowed by pine and silence. Jed swept it quick. No tracks, no scent of fire, no sign of company. Just a broken door and 4 moldy walls. Perfect. He hauled the crate of firewood inside. May made tea from dried sage. They didn't talk much. But when Jed laid his bedroll down beside the door, she finally said, "You didn't have to stay in this. You could have let me go." Jed looked over. "And then what? You end up hanging from some post with your eyes burned out? That ain't justice." "I'm not asking for justice," she said. "I'm asking for blood." Jed's voice went cold. "You'll get it." That night, someone knocked. Just once. Then silence. Jed froze, shotgun raised, breath caught in his throat. May reached slowly for the revolver they dug up from the box. Another knock, this time louder. Jed whispered, "If I drop, shoot first." He opened the door, slow, and stared into the face of a man he hadn't seen in 5 years. Marshall Ellis Black. One eye gone, long scar down his cheek. Badge rusted but still pinned to his chest. He looked Jed up and down. "Hell," he said. "I was hoping it wasn't you." Jed didn't lower the shotgun. "Didn't think you were still alive," he muttered. Marshall Ellis Black gave a crooked smile. "I get that a lot." He stepped forward, slow, boots crunching snow-dusted pine needles. May stood behind Jed, revolver tucked against her thigh. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. Black noticed. "You must be the girl," he said, voice low. Jed narrowed his eyes. "What do you want, Marshall?" Black raised his hands, palms out. "Not here to arrest you. Not yet. I'm here to tell you there's a bounty on her head so high, it's drawing killers out of the dirt." He stepped into the cabin without asking. $10,000, he said. "Dead or alive. Posted by name. May Fallon." May didn't speak. Jed locked the door behind them and said, flat, "You working for Gentry now?" Black chuckled dark. "Gentry tried to hire me. I turned him down." "Why?" "Because I was there, Jed. Pike Creek. I saw the bodies. I saw what they did to her family. I buried her father." May's voice cracked. "Why didn't you stop them?" Black's single eye turned to her. Not cruel, but weathered. Tired. Haunted. I was one man. With one badge. And back then, I still thought justice meant something in this territory. He took off his coat. Underneath, a bulletproof vest lined with deep scratches. Things are different now. The fire snapped between them. May finally asked, "Why'd you come?" Black leaned back. "Because they're sending someone worse." "Who?" "The man they hire when they want the body to disappear before the blood dries." Jed frowned. "Name?" Black nodded slowly. "Calder Briggs." The name landed heavy. Jed looked at May. Her face had gone pale. She whispered, "He killed my mother." Calder Briggs, ex-bounty hunter. No known address, no official record. Just a legend in old gunfights and burned ledgers. Last folks who saw him said he carried a lasso made of scalps. Jed poured a drink with a shaking hand. Black said, "He's already in the hills. I tracked him to Devil's Ladder 2 days ago. He moves at night." May stood. "Then we move now." Jed shook his head. "He's not just a killer, May. He hunts. If we move blind, we die tired." Black added, "But we got one advantage." "What's that?" "He don't know I switched sides." By dawn, they were riding. 3 horses, no wagon, just satchels, weapons, and the journal May kept close to her chest. Their goal wasn't escape anymore. It was exposure. Jed's plan was half mad. Reach the old telegraph station in Cinder Ridge and wire the documents to a judge in Carson City who might not be paid off. Maybe. Black said, "They'll expect you to run north. We go south, through Flint Ridge." May said nothing. Jed glanced back. "You all right?" She nodded once, but her hand hadn't left her revolver in hours. They made camp that night in a cave tucked between limestone cliffs. The air was cold and damp, and the moon rode low and red over the peaks. Jed kept watch, rifle across his lap. He heard the whisper first, just a breeze maybe, then a rustle behind the rocks. He rose slow, moved out into the dark, and froze. A scalp hung from the branch of a dead juniper tree. Below it, drawn in blood on the stone. Traitor. Back at the fire, he found May awake. Black, too. Jed tossed the bloody scalp into the fire. It hissed. "He's close." Black nodded. "He's toying with us." May didn't blink. "Let him. I'm done running." Jed looked at her. "You planning to kill him?" She stared into the flames. "No," she said. Then slowly, "I'm planning to let him try." The ride to Cinder Ridge took the better part of a day. The old telegraph station sat like a forgotten tooth on the edge of a rock bluff. One crooked chimney, 2 busted windows, and a rusted metal key wired into nothing but dust and hope. Jed dismounted slow. The place looked dead. "Don't like it," he muttered. Marshal Black swept the area. Too quiet. No wind, no birds. May didn't speak. She just climbed the steps, pushed open the creaking door, and walked inside like she'd already decided if she died here. So be it. Inside was worse. Dust on everything. Cobwebs across the keys. But something was off. Jed saw it first. The wire spool was still warm. Someone had sent a message. Recently. He raised his shotgun. "We're not alone." Black moved toward the back room, pistol drawn. That's when the smell hit them. Smoke. Grease. Blood. Black kicked the door. There, hanging upside down from the rafters, was the station agent, throat cut, mouth sewn shut with black thread. On the wall behind him, written in dried blood, "Send her out." Jed spun, just as the first shot came through the wall. May dove low. Black returned fire, quick, disciplined bursts. Jed saw a shadow dart behind the chimney. "Briggs." Jed shouted, "He's flanking!" But Black was already moving. silent, fast for a man his age, disappearing through the side door. May grabbed the journal from her satchel, tossed it onto the desk, and began tapping the telegraph key furiously with both hands. Jed covered her. The keys clicked like a heartbeat. To Judge Klein. Barlow conspiracy confirmed. See names attached. Urgent. Send federal warrants. Please God. M. Fallon. Outside, gunfire snapped. Then a scream. Jed rushed out, found Black on the ground, gut shot. "Damn it!" Jed hissed, dragging him to cover. "Where is he?" Black gritted his teeth, blood pouring through his fingers. "Roof! He's fast." Jed looked up. Briggs stood on the ridge above the station, long coat flapping in the wind. His face was thin, leathery, sunken eyes like pits of ash. He raised his rifle, aimed right at the telegraph room. Jed shouted, "No!" The shot rang out. Inside, the key went still. Jed bolted in, heart pounding. May was there, still breathing, pale, eyes wide. The bullet had missed, just barely, tearing through the wall above her head. Jed grabbed her by the shoulders. "You okay?" She nodded, breath shaky. "I finished it. The message. It went through." He looked at her. Really looked. This wasn't a girl anymore. This was someone who'd buried her whole family and was still standing. He stood and turned to the door. No more running. Jed walked out slow, shotgun lowered. Briggs stood 10 paces away, rifle in hand, wind catching his coat like wings. Jed said, loud and clear, "She's not yours." Briggs tilted his head. "Everyone's someone's, rancher." Jed stepped closer. "You killed her family, burned the farm, hunted her for 10 years. Briggs gave a slow, humorless smile. "They didn't belong on that land." "Neither did you." Jed raised the shotgun. Briggs didn't flinch. "Go on, then," the bounty hunter said. "See if you're faster than me." The air stilled. Dust hovered. Both men locked eyes. Jed thought of May, of the fire, of the girl who didn't beg when she was handed over like property. And he pulled the trigger. Boom! Briggs dropped, a single red hole in the center of his chest. The rifle slipped from his hand and hit the dust. Jed lowered the shotgun, chest heaving. May came out a moment later, stood beside him, looking down at the man who'd haunted her dreams. She said nothing, just looked up at Jed. "Now what?" Jed turned toward the telegraph station. "Now we wait." 2 days later, the federal marshals arrived. 3 wagons, 17 men, 2 judges. Tolan was arrested without a fight. Gentry tried to run. They found him in a mine shaft with a bottle of poison and a letter he never finished. Mayor Tibbett hanged himself the morning the warrants were served. Jed stood outside his cabin weeks later, whittling wood on the porch. May stepped out beside him, her hair clean, her hands wrapped in bandages from helping rebuild the fence line. She said, "Marshal Black would have liked to see this." Jed nodded. He saw enough to die, right? They didn't say much more. They didn't have to. Because some debts aren't paid in gold or land. They're paid in blood, and silence, and survival. 1 year passed. The prairie grass grew tall around the cabin. The fence was whole again. The roof no longer leaked. The wind still howled, but it no longer brought fear. May Fallon was no longer a fugitive. Her name had been cleared. Her father's name restored. She'd received a letter from Carson City with a wax seal and a commendation. But she didn't frame it. She burned it. "Words don't fix bones," she'd said. Jed Callahan still didn't talk much. He didn't have to. He built, he mended, he hunted. He carved small animals from driftwood and left them along the windowsill, never mentioning them again. They didn't speak of Briggs or Tolan or the bodies that had fed the crows last spring. They didn't have to, until the stranger rode in. It was a Sunday. Hot, dry, sky like glass. Jed spotted the rider a mile out, just a silhouette on a brown mare, moving slow. Deliberate. May stood beside him, squinting. "Mail rider?" Jed asked. "No," she said, almost instantly. "Wrong hat. Too stiff." The man dismounted just outside the fence. Jed walked down to meet him. May stayed on the porch. The rider was tall, lean, clean boots, long gray coat, tin star on his chest, but not the kind Jed recognized. The man smiled politely. "Jed Callahan? That's right. I'm Marshal Cray, appointed out of Yuma, just passing through." Jed's eyes moved to the star. It wasn't government issue. "Funny badge." Cray didn't blink. "We make our own in Yuma." "Do you?" Behind him, the horse snorted, restless. It smelled something Jed couldn't yet. May stepped off the porch. Cray saw her. His face changed, just for a second. A flicker of recognition. May froze. "You said you were from Yuma?" she asked. "That's right, ma'am." "You ever hear the name?" She paused, voice tightening. "Gail Fallon?" Cray's eye twitched. Then he smiled. "Of course I did." Jed moved faster than most could see, shotgun in hand, aimed before Cray could twitch. But the stranger didn't flinch. "Easy," Cray said, holding his hands out. "No need for trouble." May's voice came, ice cold. "There were 5 names in that journal." Jed didn't lower the gun. "We caught 4, she said. Tolan, Gentry, Pike, Tibbet." She stepped forward. "You're the 5th, aren't you?" Cray looked at her, really looked, and the mask slipped. He smiled wide, not polite, predatory. "I was wondering how long it'd take you to figure that out." Jed stepped forward. "Who are you?" "I'm the man who funded it," Cray said. "The survey, the land swap, the killings. I paid every one of them, and they failed to finish the job." He looked at May. "You've grown up." Jed cocked the shotgun. "Get off this land." "You'll shoot a federal marshal?" Cray asked. "You ain't no marshal." "Maybe not." Cray grinned. "But I still know how to clean up a mess." From behind his coat, his hand twitched, toward the gun at his side. May didn't hesitate. She pulled her revolver and fired once. The shot hit Cray just below the left eye. He crumpled without a word. Dust curled around his body like smoke around a dying fire. Jed walked over and kicked the weapon from Cray's twitching fingers. He was still alive. Barely. He looked up at May with blood in his teeth. "You think this ends with me?" he rasped. May stared down at him. "No," she said. "I ended it with you." They buried him under the elm tree. No marker. Just silence. A week later, a letter arrived from Carson City. Another medal. Another thank you. Jed threw it in the fire. May said nothing. She just carved another wooden crow and placed it on the windowsill. That night, they ate in peace. And for the first time since she'd walked off that gambler's wagon, May Fallon laughed.